Think about your biggest fear today. The risk you keep talking yourself out of. The conversation you've avoided for years. Now ask yourself a strange question. Is that fear actually yours? Or is it an echo, a sound bouncing off the walls of a house you haven't lived in for decades? Because the first home you ever knew didn't just shelter your body, it quietly wrote the operating system of your mind. Every door you weren't allowed to open, every hallway you were afraid to walk at night, every room that felt warm or cold or forbidden. They're all still here, hidden inside the choices you'll make today. This is the story of how the architecture of your childhood became the architecture of you. To understand this, you have to understand something neuroscience only fully confirmed in 2014. That year, a researcher named John O'Keefe shared the Nobel Prize for discovering place cells, neurons in the hippocampus that fire when you stand in a specific location. Your brain, it turns out, builds literal maps of the spaces you inhabit. But here's the catch. The hippocampus isn't only your map maker. It's also one of the central hubs of memory and emotion, which means space and feeling are wired together at the deepest level of the brain. When you were a child, this map-making machinery was running at full speed, soaking up not just where the walls were, but what each space meant. The philosopher Gaston Bachelard once wrote that the house is one of the greatest tools we have for analyzing the human soul. He believed we don't just remember our childhood homes, we carry their floor plans inside us. The attic becomes our reason, the cellar becomes our fear. And every drawer, every corner, every staircase becomes a metaphor we'll use, unconsciously, for the rest of our lives. So let's walk through that house, room by room, and see how it built you. Every childhood home has a forbidden door. Maybe it was a parent's study, a locked cabinet, a formal living room you weren't allowed to touch, a basement you were told never to go into. To an adult, a closed door is just a closed door. But to a developing mind, a forbidden space teaches a far more powerful lesson than the room itself ever could. Psychologists call the mental frameworks we build in childhood schemas, templates the brain uses to predict the world. And a forbidden room installs one of the most durable schemas of all. There are places that are not for you. You learn that some doors stay closed, that curiosity has a cost, that on the other side of certain thresholds lives something powerful enough that you must not approach it. Now, fast forward 20 years, you're an adult, and you notice you keep avoiding certain things. Asking for the raise, starting the business, speaking the truth in a relationship, applying for the role that's just slightly above you. You tell yourself you're being realistic, but watch the pattern closely and you'll see it. These aren't decisions, they're doors. Your mind has quietly labeled them off limits, using a template it built standing in a hallway, staring at a door you were told never to open. The forbidden room didn't disappear when you grew up. It just changed its name. Now it's a topic you won't discuss, an ambition you won't claim, a part of your own potential you treat as someone else's property. Then there's the hallway. Every old house has one, that stretch of darkness between where you were and where you needed to be. The walk from the bedroom to the bathroom at 2 a.m., the basement stairs, the corner the light never quite reached. As a child, you didn't just dislike the dark, you feared it. And that fear is older than you, older than your parents, older than civilization itself. For millions of years, our ancestors survived by being afraid of the dark, because darkness is when predators hunt. And a human who wandered carelessly into the night often didn't return to pass on their genes. So evolution did something clever. It wired a fast, automatic alarm system into a small, almond-shaped structure in the brain called the amygdala, a system that floods you with fear before you've even had time to think. A poorly lit hallway lights that system up. And here's what matters. When you're young, your brain doesn't file that fear neatly under darkness. It generalizes. It learns a broader, more dangerous lesson, that the unknown is a threat, that what you cannot see clearly can hurt you. Decades later, that same circuit is still running. Except now, the dark hallway is a career change you can't see the end of. An investment with an uncertain outcome. A move to a new city. Behavioral economists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky proved that humans feel the pain of a loss roughly twice as intensely as the pleasure of an equal gain. We are not neutral about uncertainty, we are terrified of it. And for many of us, that terror was first rehearsed in a hallway, as a child, staring into a darkness we were certain was hiding something. There's even an architectural echo here. In 2007, researchers Joan Myers-Levy and Rui Zhu discovered what's now called the cathedral effect. High ceilings prime the mind for freedom and abstract, expansive thought, while low ceilings prime it for confinement and narrow, cautious thinking. The very dimensions of the rooms you grew up in may have been quietly tuning the size of the thoughts you allow yourself to think. But perhaps the most fascinating clue is hidden not in the rooms, but in the doorways between them. In 2011, a psychologist named Gabriel Radvansky at the University of Notre Dame ran a now famous experiment. He had people carry objects through virtual rooms and discovered something bizarre. Simply walking through a doorway caused them to forget. He called it the doorway effect. The brain, he proposed, treats a threshold as an event boundary, a place where it closes one mental file and opens another. Doorways aren't just architecture, they're punctuation marks in the story of your life. Now think about how you were taught to cross them as a child. Were you allowed to walk freely into any room, head high, certain you belonged? Or did you learn to pause at thresholds, to knock, to wait, to read the temperature of a room before entering, to make yourself smaller as you crossed? Because that early choreography of entering and exiting hardwired something profound, your baseline sense of whether you belong in the rooms you walk into. Watch a person who grew up feeling welcome everywhere walk into a meeting, a party, a negotiation. They cross the threshold without hesitation. They assume the room is theirs. Now watch someone who learned, as a child, to be cautious at every door. They hover at the edge. They wait to be invited. They apologize for taking up space. This is the threshold effect playing out in real time, in boardrooms and on first dates and in job interviews, written by a hallway 30 years ago. There's an even deeper evolutionary layer here. In 1975, geographer J. Appleton proposed prospect-refuge theory, the idea that humans instinctively crave spaces where we can see without being seen, a safe vantage point inherited from our ancestors on the open savanna. The childhood home was your first refuge, and whether it felt like a safe base from which to explore the world or a place you had to defend yourself inside, shaped whether you grew up to see life as an adventure to be explored or a threat to be managed. You might be wondering, why does any of this last? Why don't we simply outgrow the house? The answer is timing. The brain of a young child is extraordinarily plastic, forming new connections at a staggering rate, wiring itself to fit the environment it finds. These early years are what scientists call a sensitive period, when experience doesn't just pass through us, it physically shapes the architecture of the brain. The patterns you absorb before you have the words to question them become the patterns that feel, forever after, like simple reality. And the home gets a second secret advantage: your senses. The smell of a particular soap, the creak of a particular stair, the specific quality of afternoon light through a kitchen window. The olfactory bulb, which processes smell, is wired directly into the brain's memory and emotion centers, which is why a single scent can drop you into your childhood in an instant. This is sometimes called the Proust effect, after the writer whose narrator was hurled back through time by the taste of a single cookie. Your childhood home didn't store its lessons in your conscious memory, where you could find them and argue with them. It stored them in your body, in reflexes, in smells, in the way your shoulders tense at a raised voice or relax at the sound of rain on a roof. Attachment researchers describe the ideal childhood home as a secure base, a place safe enough that a child feels free to venture out and explore, knowing they can return. Whether your first home was that secure base or something more complicated, you've been carrying the answer into every room you've entered since. But here's the twist, the part that changes everything. A floor plan is not a life sentence, it's a draft. For most of human history, We believed the adult brain was fixed, finished, set in stone. We now know that's false. The same plasticity that let your childhood home write its blueprint never fully switches off. The brain keeps rewiring itself throughout your entire life in response to what you repeatedly do and where you repeatedly go. Which means the forbidden door can be opened. The dark hallway can be lit. The threshold you've always hovered at can be crossed, deliberately, until your nervous system learns a new lesson, that you belong here too. The first time you do it, every old alarm will fire. The amygdala will scream. The childhood schema will insist this room is not for you, and you walk in anyway. Because the most powerful realization is this: for years, you were living inside a house someone else designed. The moment you see the floor plan, really see it, you stop being only its inhabitant. You pick up the pen. You become the architect. So the next time you feel that strange resistance, the inexplicable no, the fear with no clear source, the door you keep walking past, pause and ask the better question. Not what's wrong with me, but which room is this coming from? Because somewhere behind that feeling is a child, standing in a hallway, in a house that no longer exists, following a floor plan they never agreed to. You can't tear that house down. It made you who you are, for better and for worse. But you can finally walk through it with the lights on. You can open the doors you were told to fear. And you can decide, room by room, choice by choice, which walls to keep and which ones to knock down. The home built the first version of you. What you build next is up to you.